Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in again. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the newest offering from LionSteel. This is the LionSteel TRE, which stands for 3 Rapid Exchange. Now when LionSteel announced that they were doing a new knife and they kind of showed some teaser pics with a flipper tab and the IKBS logo, the majority of us LionSteel fans assumed that it would actually be an integral flipper, since LionSteel is quite famous for their integral knives such as the SR1 and the SR2. But much to our surprise, instead what they released is a small gentleman style folder, and the TRE stands for 3 Rapid Exchange, which kind of takes its cues from the knife's ability to use 3 separate systems for deployment, which are a flipper tab, a thumb stud, and then your standard two-handed opening method in places where you cannot use one-handed or quote-unquote gravity deployment. So anyways, let's get into it. We'll look at the specs, my overall impressions, the details, and just kind of go from there. So we'll talk about the presentation kind of towards the end a little bit. Spec-wise though, this is the titanium model. There are a few different models. There's a carbon fiber show side, G10 show side, and then the G10 ones I believe have G10 back spacers. They don't have the swedge in the blade, but they are all M390 and they are all frame locks. So price points, the premium ones, carbon fiber titanium, are around the $300 mark, and then the G10 ones are around the $200 mark, give or take about 10 bucks. So anyhow, the specs will be of course for this titanium one. I won't read off all the specs for all the models. But we have a blade length of 2.9 inches, a handle length of about 3.9 inches, giving us an overall of just 6.8 inches on this knife. The handle thickness is about 0.48 inches, so fairly slender knife. Handle width with the flipper tab on it is 1.2 inches. The weight on my scale is 2.95 ounces for this full titanium model here, with the thumb disc and the flipper tab installed and so forth. Blade steel is M390, and then it does use a captured IKBS bearing system, hence the IKBS logo. So, as far as my overall impressions go, I think LionSteel has done an excellent job of creating kind of an everyday user and EDC knife that works well in jean pockets, that would work well with a suit. Very elegant knife, and the model itself I think is kind of in response to a worldwide market. This knife has been developed in mind with just about every user. It's under 3 inches. It has different methods of deployment based on possibly your legal restrictions. And so I think they did an excellent job of kind of trying to address all those points at once while still making it a very beautiful and a very elegant knife. The more I've carried this one, the more I actually like it, especially for the aesthetic details and so forth. But anyways, that's it for my overall impressions. Those are the specs. Now let's get into, I guess, the more specific details. So, seeing that this is a flipper knife, the majority of you are going to want to know right off the bat, does it flip? And the answer is yes, it does. The action is good, but it's not great. So when creating a knife that fits several platforms, I think the action has to be generalized, not optimized. Had this knife been built specifically as a flipper and then they threw on a thumb disc and assumed you could open it two-handed, it really would have suffered with the thumb disc and the two-handed opening. We've seen this such as with the ZT, a lot of the ZT knives, they actually got rid of the thumb studs and just ground them down to be blade stops because people kept complaining that the thumb studs were not opening the knife readily because the knife had been optimized for flipping. Now, taking that into consideration with this knife, they've tried to give you enough detent that it flips, but also works with the thumb disc there, and then will also work with the two-handed opening method. So again, the action has been more of generalized as opposed to optimized. And if I had to concede that it worked better for one method than any of the others, it would probably be for the thumb disc here. So, of course I failed to do it on camera. but generally it works pretty well when my hand is not on the other side of a camera. So anyways, but yeah, it will flip. It'll do the light switch or pulling straight back method if you do a nice forceful one. So did it just fine there. Or the push down where you kind of preload it, works well in that regard too. But if you do want to half-ass it, it will not deploy completely. So anyways, that's the flipping action. With the way that it's set up, after carrying it for an hour or two, I was already used to the movement and I can deploy it readily anytime that I want to. So, all right, now the thumb disc, as you can see, hopefully, it has a certain degree of jimping, and you want to make sure that that is facing the tip of the blade and not the other side, because your thumb does kind of grip onto that for opening. So that works quite well. Anyway, so those are the opening methods, and then of course two-handed, just fine. So again, you know, there are going to be certain people in certain locations that are not allowed to have one-handed opening methods, or this would actually be a really interesting knife. Let's say you have you know, a father, grandfather, or a friend who likes traditional knives. You could easily remove the pocket clip, remove the flipper tab and the thumb disc, and this would be a very elegant kind of traditional style folder, but certainly in modern materials and modern machining methods. So now you cannot shake the blade out. I've tried full force and the blade retention is excellent. So while we're on that subject, perfectly centered. Lockup is probably about 15%. It's kind of hard to see in the sliding, but anyways, let's talk about the ergonomics. I do have extra large hands, but I can get a full 4-finger grip on this knife with the space allotted. Maybe, yeah, I can just barely get a full 4-finger grip, but it's comfortable for me. You do have this large kind of chamfered area here that seems to lock in your first finger and your middle finger quite well, you know, thereby giving you quite a degree of control and comfort in the hand. Everything has been certainly rounded and contoured, no sharp edges anywhere on this knife. Every inch, millimeter has been touched and caressed. So a lot of detail, a lot of aesthetic detail in this knife, but ergonomics quite good. One of my favorite things is probably the rounded spine. Absolutely beautiful. Jumping ahead of here a little bit, but with this, you know, I actually left the thumb disc on here because it functions fairly well as a nice spot for my thumb to go. Kind of locks in the thumb a little bit, although I do feel bad about covering any aspect of this beautifully rounded spine. So ergonomically works really well. Reverse grip, I don't know why you would ever use this knife in reverse grip, but it's comfortable in that grip as well. So yeah, good control. Even with my extra large hands. If you have hands larger than mine, maybe that would not work for you, but large, medium, small, it's going to work excellent in all those regards. Now here on the blade, this is an M390 blade steel. You do have the LionSteel Italy M390 designation. On this side you have the Moletta designation, and Moletta is the nickname for Michele Pensato, and he is the designer and I think the engineer essentially on creating this knife. So you'll see his name on the SR1 and the SR2. He's certainly a mainstay of the LionSteel family at this point. So you'll see Moletta, and that I think loosely translates to pocket clip in Italian, so that's his nickname. All right, the handles. Let's talk about the handles. I think one of my favorite things is definitely just the beautiful CNC lines left over from the milling process. And not only are they here on like the flats, but they even go around the handles and they're on kind of the spine of the handles here. Again, every inch of this knife has been touched. So nicely rounded, but beautiful aesthetic detail. Even here on the portion for the left-handed pocket clip, should you move it, that also carries those beautiful faint CNC lines. So they didn't leave this, you know, empty and create an eyesore on the knife. That really helps it to tie in well. So kind of a semi-floating backspacer here. Also quite rounded, very comfortable, very attractive, beautifully executed. So even the lock bar, again, it wasn't given just a, you know, a square 90-degree cut. It has varying degrees here. Here where the screws integrate, you can see a few different faces have been milled in. Just beautifully aesthetic. I think this knife really kills it aesthetically, so wonderfully done. Now with the lock bar in mind here, you can see that they left the lock side slightly raised, or did a cutout here on the show side so you can easily disengage it. You do see some faint or some lines here from the milling as well, because they did chamfer that so that there's no sharp edges. So disengagement is quite easy. No problems whatsoever accessing and disengaging that knife. So, all right, hardware. We've already talked about it a little bit, but you know, you do have the thumb disc, you do have the flipper tab, both of which are removable. You do have the, there's some additional screws here. I guess let's pull that out real quick. So here is the additional hardware that comes with this knife, but you can see here, like, this is a round screw. You do have a flat screw. I can't remember what that one's for just this very second, but when you put on the thumb disc here, you want to put in the flat screw so that it doesn't protrude, but when you don't have the thumb disc in, you want to cover the hole in the blade here with the round one. And so what that does is you take this off, you put the rounded screw in, and that leaves you with like a perfectly rounded spine, so you don't have like a dip or a divot from the screw hole here. So again, that's, you know, just all attention to detail. They give you a nice spot to put the screws when you're not using them, so you don't lose them. You know, they didn't just give you a baggie or something. So again, that's quite nice. They also included the T6 and the T8 drivers here, and they're beautifully machined. They even included a key ring that has also been beautifully machined as well. So again, just incredible attention to detail and presentation. You know, they got a lot of things right with this knife, even down to the way that it's packaged and shipped and so forth. So I really like all of those aspects. But all right, again, you do have the IKBS logo here. As you can see, it's kind of a triangular cutout, and that way this side of the pivot sits in there and it won't rotate. This side, they've mirrored that triangular shape in a pivot cutout. So again, kind of a cool custom pivot with the Torx connector on this side. You do have a beautiful 3D titanium pocket clip here. Good amount of gap there. Again, works well with jeans, works well with slacks, goes in and out of the pocket without any problems. Has the nice vertical mill lines in it that contrast the, I guess, the horizontal or kind of curvature of these lines. Even the lock bar cutout here has its own kind of different CNC lines again, so a lot of attention to detail. Every inch of this knife has been touched. So anyways, I guess that's pretty much it for the most part. You know, as you can tell, I certainly like this knife. Yeah, it's not the best flipper, but you know, that's okay. It's, you know, a small EDC knife, beautifully done, great attention to detail. You know, if you like smaller knives, I think this one would make you happy. Now, Johnny at LionSteel has said that if you're not happy with the detent setup or the action, you can contact them, send the knife back, and they will optimize it for better flipping action if you do want to ship it overseas to Italy or potentially to DPX Hest in California. Again, those details are still kind of being sorted out at the moment because some people aren't terribly happy with the flipping action. But the knife is excellent. Now, a lot of you are going to want to compare this knife to the ZT450, but it's a completely different knife, especially in this configuration. It's in a different price point, kind of a different design premise. Again, this knife was designed for worldwide use, uses the best of materials, crazy amount of detail. It's not a dedicated flipper. So those are some of the considerations. Another one is that it has been reported that the G10 models, which do not have removable flipper tabs, have larger detent balls, and so they potentially have better flipping action. So again, that's just another slight consideration when you're trying to figure out which model to use or to get. But anyways, I guess that's pretty much it for the knife. Again, I'm really happy with it. I think they really took on quite a bear here when they tried to make a knife that fit. They brought in as much of the world's population as possible. The fact that you can change the configuration is awesome. Again, there have been so many people that have bought knives in thumb stud versions, or then they bought the flipper version, or then they bought a version with a thumb nail nick or something. But we're constantly changing. You have all the options here in front of you. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. Ooh, one other detail before I forget. I did love the fact that they included a detent, there it is, kind of a detent track on the tang of the blade here. And so that makes it easier for the detent ball to overcome the tang and jump up on there. So anyways, another detail. I wish more manufacturers would use that. But thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow me on Instagram as well under Epic Snuggle Bunny. I'm also a co-host on the Modern Neanderthal podcast. And be sure to give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. See you on the next one.